Welcome everyone to a new episode of Alex Exploring. I am Alex, and today we are exploring Delaware County, just north of Columbus in Franklin County. We're starting here at the edge of Westerville and then making our way up through the county. So let's cross the street to our first Ohio historical marker. All right, our first marker is here at this brick home, and we are here at marker 321 for Delaware County, titled Sharp Family Homes, placed in 2002. The Sharp family homes and their locations on North State Street and Africa Road mark an important route through Westerville on the Underground Railroad. The family patriarch, Garrett Sharp, was an original settler of Sharp Settlement, now Westerville, and donated land for and helped organize the first Methodist church. He is also associated with the founding of Blended Young Men's Seminary, which was acquired by Otterbein College, an institution with enrollment open to African Americans and women from its inception in 1847. He and his sons were all noted abolitionists who, along with Bishop William Hamby and Otterbein President Lewis Davis, assisted Southern slaves on their road to freedom. From the Sharps' homes, slaves would have proceeded north to the house of Samuel Patterson on Africa Road and along Alum Creek to the Quaker settlement near Marengo in Morrow County. So we're going to look over here. We have a little map that complements this side. Garrett Sharp home at 259 North State Street, built in 1849, served as a Westerville meeting place. His son Stephen, a teacher and a justice of the peace, resided in the stately home at 8025 Africa Road, built in 1857. The home's construction is representative of mid-19th century rural architecture in Delaware County and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Another of Garrett's sons, Joseph, resided at 8216 Africa Road around 1843, also known as Yarnell's Farm. Son Gary built a house around 1857 on the current property of St. Paul's Catholic Church on North State Street. However, the house was demolished in 2001. So it's a gorgeous day, and this is our first stop. So let's take it in, get some photos, and we're going to head on to our next stop here in Delaware County. All right, so we are now here at this cemetery, and this is where we're going to find our next Ohio historical marker here in Harlem Township in Delaware, Ohio, in Delaware County. It's very old, 19th century, cemetery here. People died in 1846, 1880s, 1850s. And we're celebrating this guy, Richard Thompson. This is Ohio historical marker number 2121, field musician Richard W. Thompson. Tunes played on fife and drums regulated a soldier's life in camp and his actions on the battlefield. Heard over the roar of battle and through the haze of smoke, fifes and drums, field music, communicated orders to massed troops quickly. Richard Willoughby Thompson was born around 1742, died in 1837, buried in Fancher Cemetery, was a field musician during the American Revolution and the War of 1812. According to his grandson Henry's recollections from the 1920s, Thompson was born in Dublin, Ireland, and enlisted in the British Army, where his service accumulated in his capture while picking blackberries. He switched allegiances, joined the Colonials, and was sent to Virginia. Thompson was appointed the fife major of the 5th Virginia Regiment and remained a fife major as Virginia units organized during the war. Thompson was appointed drum major of the 3rd and 4th Virginia Regiment in October 1779. As a fife or drum major, he was responsible for training other field musicians. During the War of 1812, Governor Return J. Meigs appointed the aged Thompson master musician of the Ohio Militia, and he joined General William Henry Harrison's Grand Camp near Upper Sandusky. Thompson trained and drilled field musicians, and his activity was rather remarkable for a man his age. Noted an eyewitness. Thompson was tragically murdered on December 28, 1837. Rebecca Lee Thompson, who lived from 1762 to 1852, is buried beside her husband Richard. Other known Revolutionary War veterans buried in Fancher Cemetery are Beneja Cook from Connecticut, William Fancher from New York, Zamiri Hills from Connecticut, and James Garlinghouse from New Jersey. So they're scattered throughout here. This is a pretty populated 19th century cemetery. And this is where he rests. See the 1776 and the War of 1812 stars there next to Rebecca, his wife. He died 95 and she died 90. Lived a pretty good life for the 1800s. Let's get our photo of the historical marker, and we will head to our next. All right, we are already at our third historical marker here in Delaware County. This is number 1821, placed in 2013, titled Beneja Cook Sawmill and Farmstead. Beneja Cook and the families who settled in Harlem Township, Delaware County, are honored for creating a community of productive farms. Beneja and Cassandra Cook family arrived when the land was forested and settled on 500 acres of the 4,000 acres that Beneja purchased at a sheriff's auction on June 12, 1807. The mill race, visible along the north side of Duncan Run near the Gorse Road Bridge, is the last vestige of the sawmill operated by Beneja Cook on the Cook Farmstead. The Cook Farmstead was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1977. Upstream from the mill race are traces of the foundation for a dam or a wooden weir constructed across Duncan Run. Logs were floated down Duncan Run at times of high water and stored in the mill pond. They were then sorted and moved single file along the race to the sawmill. The mill race facilitated the movement of logs and turned the mill wheel that drove up the up and down motion of the saw. The lumber produced was used primarily in construction on local farms, and the cleared land became farm fields. So there's a little bit of history of agriculture here in Delaware County. Beneja Cook. All right, let's head to our next Ohio historical marker. All right, we are here now in Sunbury, Ohio, just north of Westerville on Route 3, where we're going to find our next Ohio historical marker. This is going to be all about Sunbury. This is Ohio historical marker 921, placed here in 2003. Sunbury, Ohio, an Ohio stagecoach town from 1820 to 1873. From its beginning in 1816, Sunbury was destined to be a stagecoach town. Anticipating large numbers of stagecoach travelers in Sunbury, the town's founder, Lawrence Myers, built an inn at the intersection of two major stagecoach routes, the old Walhonding Trail and the Delaware Newark Pike. In 1820, first stagecoach arrived in Sunbury from Mount Vernon. Famous stagecoach travelers who stopped in Sunbury included William Henry Harrison, Rutherford B. Hayes, Henry Clay, and Johnny Appleseed. Railway travel became more prevalent, and consequently the last stagecoach rolled out of Sunbury in 1873. And this is going to be about this building here, Sunbury Town Hall, 1868. When Sunbury was platted in 1816, a town square was set aside for public use with the intention of constructing a town hall on the site. The first two stories of the town hall were built as a school in 1868 for $5,000. The Masons added the third story for $1,500 and occupied it for 91 years until a lodge was constructed. Since 1868, the town hall has served Sunbury as a village office building, jail, fire station, and community library. Church services as well as farmers' institutes were held in the building, and at one time it housed a bank. In 2002, the town hall was renovated for use as a community room and village offices. Our next Ohio historical marker is actually going to be straight ahead here. So we're going to walk on over there and check that one out. So right out on this corner is a statue of Johnny Appleseed. also known as John Chapman, frequent visitor and friend of Sunbury. And we're gonna head on over there where our next marker is. All right, here we are. This one, number 1921, was placed here in 2013. It's titled Major General William Stark Rosecrans. W.S. Rosecrans, soldier, engineer, architect, and inventor, was born in Kingston Township in 1819. After graduation from West Point in 1842, he served in the engineering corps, then taught at West Point. As a civilian, he engineered a river lock system and perfected lamp oil. During the Civil War, Rosecrans commanded Union armies of the Ohio, the Cumberland, and the Missouri, and developed a popular wartime ambulance. Old Rosie led his troops to victory at Iuka, Corinth, Stones River, and Tullahoma. He helped raise $789,000 for soldiers' relief and designed St. Joseph's Cathedral in Columbus. He later served as minister to Mexico, registrar to the U.S. Treasury, and a congressman from California. He died in 1898 and is buried in Arlington National Cemetery. So that is going to be a statue of him. But we have another side here, the glacial erratics. The base of this statue is a 40,000-pound glacial erratic pushed to central Ohio from northern Ontario by the Wisconsin glaciers from 110,000 to 10,000 years ago. It is an ingenious rock formed from ancient volcanic magma more than 2.5 billion years ago. It is one of the 5 largest glacial erratics in Ohio. Ohio's largest crystalline erratic is located 3 miles east of Sunbury. This large oval-shaped granite boulder is 22 feet long, 18 feet wide, and 8 feet high with a circumference of 72 feet. The weight of the exposed portion of the erratic is about 200 tons. So that's like 400,000 pounds. Just taking a look, there's a giant boulder and the general himself. Let's head back to the car, hit up some more Ohio historical markers. All right, we are here at the Radner Cemetery in Delaware County, just northwest of the city of Delaware. This one is number 1121, Radner Cemetery Lichgate. Built in 1910, this lichgate was designed by local architect William Robert Powell to commemorate early settlers of Radnor who immigrated from Wales. Traditional in England and Wales, lichgates cover gateways to shelter coffins until clergymen arrive for burial. The Radnor lichgate has 2 openings, a larger one designed for horse-drawn hearse and a smaller one for mourners. Powell added the tower to resemble a church steeple for a more electostatical style. Constructed of stone from local Meredith quarry, the gate features raised joints and oak gates to close the entrance. See if there's anything on the back. Same thing on the back, so take a moment to appreciate this cemetery gate. You can see the smaller one for people and then horse-drawn hearse. It's really cool. Let's head on to our next stop. We are back. This is day 2 of us exploring Delaware County. We are here at the Delaware Golf Club where we're going to find our next Ohio historical marker. Let's get to it. All right, so this is numbered 121, placed here in 2000, the first Ohio historical marker in Delaware County, titled Pioneer Radio Telescope. 1/2 mile east is the site of the former Big Ear Radio Telescope, designed by Dr. John Krause, pioneering radio astronomer at Ohio State University. It had a collecting area of 340 by 70 feet. The observatory was completed in 1963. The Ohio Sky Survey, recorded here between 1965 and 1972, was the most accurate, reliable, and complete mapping of cosmic radio signals. The quote, radio sky for many years. Big Ear gained fame for its ability to detect quasi-stellar radio sources, or quasars, and for its discovery of some of the most distant objects known. This observatory conducted a 24-year continuous search for evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence, during which the famous WOW signal was received in 1977. Big Ear was demolished in 1998. Big Ear consisted of a flat, tiltable reflector and a fixed standing parabolic reflector and pairs of receiving horn antennas. Radio signals were bounced off of the flat reflection focused by the parabolic reflection and collected by the feed horns. The telescope used the rotation of the Earth to scan a narrow path across the sky once each day. The Ohio State University and National Science Foundation funded the telescope's design and construction, and it was built almost entirely with faculty and student part-time labor. From 1973 through 1997, the observatory was operated and maintained by a dedicated group of volunteer scientists with generous assistance from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, and private benefactors. Successful operation of the telescope would not have been possible without the dedication of site technician Eugene McCassell, and that is the Big Ear Radio Telescope. Time to head to our next Ohio historical marker. All right, we are now at our next stop on South Sandusky Street, where we're going to find Camp Delaware. Let's see if the backside is the same or if it's got better lighting. Yeah, this one's got a little bit better lighting on this side. Camp Delaware from 1862 to 1864. This is Ohio historical marker number 221 in Delaware County, placed here in 2002. Near this site, the Union Army established 2 camps on either side of the Olentangy River during the Civil War. Both were known as Camp Delaware. The first camp, situated on the west side of the river in the summer of 1862, was where the white recruits of the 96th and 121st Regiment of the Ohio Volunteer Infantry were mustered into service. A second camp on the east side of the Olentangy was established in the summer of 1863 and became the rendezvous point for most African American Ohioans joining the Army. The 127th Regiment of the Ohio Infantry, Volunteer Infantry, later renamed the 5th Regiment of the United States Colored Troops. The 27th U.S. Colored Troops and members of other African American units were mustered into service at Camp Delaware. So there's some Civil War history for you. We're going to head on to our next stop. All right, so we are now on the campus of Ohio Wesleyan University, home of the bishops. This is where we're going to find our next Ohio historical marker. I'm walking there now. So let's keep going and get to this historical marker. So I just saw one of these um, walking on campus, but Delaware County has their own set of historical markers specific about Delaware County, and we'll do those in another video. But yeah, just wanted to make sure that you knew that some counties in Ohio have their own historical markers. So we'll be hitting those up in a future video. All right, we are right next to Elliott Hall, built in 1833. This is where we're going to find our next historical marker. Number 821, titled Elliott Hall, original building at Ohio Wesleyan University. Built in 1833 as a health resort named the Mansion House Hotel, Elliott Hall is noted as Ohio's oldest collegiate Greek Revival building. The closure of the Bank of the United States and an economic panic in 1837 created nationwide financial difficulties, which led to the decline of the luxury resort. Under the leadership of Reverend Adam Poe, minister of William Street Methodist Church, the citizens of Delaware purchased the building for the establishment of a Methodist college for men. Ohio Wesleyan University was chartered on March 7, 1842, and the founding building was named for Dr. Charles Eliot, Ohio Conference leader who helped examine the site and establish the university. In 1877, Ohio Wesleyan University and the Ohio Wesleyan Female College merged into a co-educational institution. Elliott Hall was moved to its present location in 1892 when University Hall was built. It's the same on both sides, so we're going to take a photo and then head to our next marker. All right, we have made it to our next Ohio historical marker down the street from Elliott Hall here at this church, and that's what it's going to be all about. This is the Zion African Methodist Church. I'm going to go this side for better lighting. This is marker number 1321, placed here in 2004. Organized in 1845, Zion African Methodist Episcopal Church is the oldest congregation of African descent in Delaware, with Reverend Daniel Winslow serving as the first minister. In 1853, the cornerstone of the first church was laid, which was dedicated in 1855. Three former pastors of Zion became bishops in the American Methodist Episcopal Church: James Shorter in 1868, John Mifflin Brown in 1868, and Cornelius T. Schaefer in 1900. In 1876, the existing church was raised in carpenter brick, mason, and plaster church members built the present edifice. A fire destroyed the interior on December 19, 1983, and for 2 years the congregation met in the recreation building of the London Town Apartments, undercroft of the William Street Methodist Church, and sanctuary of the Victory Seventh-day Adventist Church. On the first Sunday in October 1985, presiding elder Virgil Cummins, Pastor Rodney Thomas, and the congregation marched from the Adventist Church back into the restored sanctuary. So there it is, the Zion African Methodist Episcopal Church. Let's head on to our next stop here in Delaware. All right, we have made it to our next stop on the street with some of the Greek life for Ohio Wesleyan. But we are here at this home called the George W. Campbell home. See if these plants are really overgrowing this. So we're going to do our best to read it. This is number 521 here in Delaware County, placed here in 2002. George W. Campbell originally built this highly picturesque structure in 1854. Designed with Romanesque and Norman Revival architectural features, a round tower, arched windows and doorways, and constructed of locally mined blue limestone. The home is representative of the work of architect W. Russell West. Campbell, a nationally eminent horticulturist, had a small vineyard to the east of the house where he developed and improved a variety of fruits, most notably the world-famous Delaware grape. Following Campbell's death in 1898, the house was sold to Dr. Aaron J. Lyon and Mrs. Abby Parrish and presented to Ohio Wesleyan University, serving for more than 70 years as Lyon Art Hall. So this is a gorgeous building. It's got some steel horses here. Beautifully. This is a very old tree here. You can see that branch is just as big as most of the large trees around my house, at least. But yeah, absolutely beautiful. The George W. Campbell home. Let's take a couple pictures and then we will head south for our next Ohio historical marker here in Delaware County. All right, we are here in Bell Point, Ohio, in Delaware County for our next Ohio historical marker, number 1621, the Bell Point Buccaneers. In the early part of the 20th century, most small villages in Ohio focused community pride on accomplishments of their high school's athletic teams. The Bell Point basketball teams of the 1920s were a great example. In 1922 to 1925, the Bell Point Buccaneers participated in the Ohio State Invitational Tournament to determine the state basketball champion. In 1922, they participated, and then in 1923, the team lost by a single point to Plattsburgh. The Bell Point teams of 1924 and 1925 were victorious, earning the title of the state basketball champions. It was a much slower game in those days with a, quote, center jump, quote, after each score, and 40 points scored was quite a feat. The Bell Point High School no longer stands, but the accomplishment of these Cinderella teams remain an important sort of pride for the Bell Point community. These events are an integral part of the history of Delaware County. So on the other side, they have the names of the state basketball champions from 1924 to 1925. So we only have a couple historical markers left, 2 or 3. So let's get headed there now. All right, we are here at our next historical marker. So there's 2 sides to this. This one is just going to be a little bit sunny, so pardon me if you can't see this, but this is 1221, placed in 2003, the Bahar Tia Hindu temple. In 1985, Hindu immigrants from India formed a celestial organization, the Bahar Tia Temple Society of Central Ohio, and through its membership adopted the Constitution and bylaws and named the place of worship Bahar Tia Hindu Temple. Later, they bought a house at 3903 Westerville Road in Columbus for prayer and worship. In 1994, the membership moved to the current location and built this temple to serve the religious, spiritual, educational, and cultural needs of those who wish to live in an active, peaceful life in accordance with the Vedic Dharma philosophies and traditions. Although the temple serves its membership throughout the United States, most of the services are provided for the membership in the Central Ohio region, whose periphery includes Mansfield, Cambridge, Parkersburg, Athens, Point Pleasant, Gallipolis, Chillicothe, Springfield, Lima, and Findlay. The Bahar Tia Hindu temple practices the philosophy described in the Vedas, which focuses on the belief that the entire world is one family without any boundaries. And, quote, one must see the divinity in every living as well as non-living entity. So let's take a picture, head on over to our next stop. We have 2 on Route 23 and then 1 in Powell. We will not be going to the one inside of the Columbus Zoo. We'll be saving that for another video. So let's hit the road. All right, we are here at our next Ohio historical marker, close to Dublin. This is the southwest corner of Delaware County, where we'll find Lucy Depp Park and the Depp Settlement. This is marker number 2021, placed 2015, right at the corner of Harriet and Frable. Lucy Depp Park was a 102-acre development named for Lucinda Depp, who lived from 1844 to 1929. She had inherited the land from her father, Abraham, an emancipated African American man and Central Ohio pioneer from Powhatan County, Virginia. Known historically as the Depp Settlement, Robert Good, who lived from 1876 to 1957, a nephew of Lucy and her husband Thomas A. White, purchased the land and developed it as, quote, Lucy Depp Park in the mid 1920s. The park became a popular vacation spot as well as a home site for African American families from Columbus and elsewhere in the segregated America before the civil rights movements of the 1950s and 60s. According to a brochure Good used to promote the development, quote, Lucy Depp Park for people who care, by the beautiful waters of the O'Shaughnessy Reservoir and Twin Lakes. All right, we got two more to go to today. I'm going to include, I believe, 3 historical markers that I've gone to in the past in a previous video at the end of this one. So make sure you stay tuned for the whole thing so you can see every single Ohio historical marker here in Delaware County. Let's hit the road, go to our next one. We are at our next Ohio historical marker here, 1721. We are at the Gooding House here off of Route 23, south of Delaware. Let's see if this side has this tree is blocking the light. So, all right, we're going to start on this side. This is the Gooding House and Tavern. Known as the Halfway House, the Gooding House and Tavern was built by George Gooding halfway between the towns of Worthington and Delaware in 1827. Its location was influenced by construction of the Columbus and Sandusky Turnpike that was chartered by the state of Ohio the year before. Also known as the Mud Pike, the turnpike was slow and difficult for travelers and could take nearly a day to travel 10 miles. The Gooding House was a perfect place for stagecoach drivers to change teams of horses and for travelers to rest and have refreshments. George Gooding also prospered as a farmer with over 1,000 acres of land. This stately brick farmstead remained in the Gooding family for 175 years, with each succeeding generation adding its imprint on the property. The Gooding House and Tavern was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2005 and restored in 2007. This cites rural taverns in early Ohio history. Stagecoach and wagon travel during the early 1800s in Ohio was arduous, and the rural tavern played an essential role by providing a place to change horses and give passengers shelter and refreshment. Early taverns and inns often featured a large public room with a tap room at one end and a dining room to the rear. The kitchen and pantry and an extension or L, and guest bedrooms on the second floor. Although the quality of accommodations varied widely, laws required tavern owner to be licensed and to provide food and shelter in addition to alcoholic beverages. Often, the tavern was the only public location between settlements, playing an important role in early communication and business. Tavern operators were often farmers as well, providing a ready market for the agricultural goods. As the railroads eclipsed road travel in the 1850s, the traditional stagecoach inn and tavern began to die out. All right, well, let's get our photos and take our modern stagecoach to our last Ohio historical marker on today's journey. All right, so we have two more, this side and the side behind it, but this is about Anson Williams and the village of Williamsville. Anson Williams visited Ohio in 1834 before he moved to Orange Township. A former resident of New York State, Williams purchased this site and the surrounding 1,000 acres of the U.S. military district lands, and he hoped to find opportunity for himself and his family. He bought the land for $6 an acre from James Wolfe, who owned the 4,000-acre section of Section 3 of Orange Township. The sides of the Columbus and on both sides of the Columbus and Sandusky Turnpike. Williams built his home and hotel with store and tavern. A hotel and tavern owned by George Gooding, and where the stage changes horses have already been established north of Williamsville. Competition may have led to Williamsville's decline. A church was built in 1845 and remained until 1900. Anson died in 1847 and his wife Hannah passed away in 1851. Both are buried in nearby Williamsville Cemetery. And then the next one, James Kilbourne and the Columbus Sandusky Turnpike. James Kilbourne, an Ohio pioneer who led settlers to the Worthington area in 1803, was born in Connecticut in 1770 and died in Ohio in 1850. In 1805, he was appointed to a federal district surveyor position in charge of 4,800 square miles from Delaware County to Lake Erie. He surveyed and laid out several towns and 100 miles of roadway for the Columbus and Sandusky Turnpike, which was completed in 1834. Famed novelist Charles Dickens wrote of the road, a great portion of the way was over what we call corduroy road, which is made by throwing trunks of trees into a marsh and leaving them to settle there. Despite its early difficulties, Anson Williams saw potential benefit to having a tavern and hotel on the turnpike. Besides being a surveyor, Kilbourne served Ohio as a U.S. representative and later as a member of the Ohio General Assembly. We made it to our first historical marker. This is commemorating the Africa community up here in the Powell, Orange Township, Olentangy, Westerville area. Let's get started. Samuel Patterson arrived in East Orange in 1824 and within a few years began to hide runaway slaves in his home. He also invited anti-slavery speakers to the pulpit of the East Orange Methodist Church, which brought Patterson and his new neighbors into conflict with the bishop. Following their consciences, they became Wesleyan Methodists and built a new church. A pro-slavery neighbor mocked them by calling their community Africa, and so East Orange was renamed to Africa. The village has disappeared, but several homes owned by Patterson and his neighbors still stand in this vicinity. And on the other side of this marker is a little bit more about the Africa community. In 1859, slaves from North Carolina plantation owned by the Alston family were sent north. The plantation's mistress had disapproved of slavery and made arrangements for the slaves to travel to Ohio and freedom. These slaves moved to the community of Africa, lived in log homes were employed by the anti-slavery farmers and joined the Wesleyan Methodist Church. After the Civil War, the free slaves left Africa and settled in the communities of Delaware and Westerville and Van Wert and Paulding counties. So here is the Ohio historical marker. This one was placed here in 2007. All about the Liberty Presbyterian Church. The first religious society organized in Liberty Township, where we're at, was formed in 1810 by elders Thomas Seller, Josiah McKinney, and Leonard Monroe. Seller and McKinney came to Delaware in 1802, before Ohio was a state. In 1820, the elders and others built Liberty Church and laid out a cemetery in the land provided by Thomas Seller. Along with Seller and McKinney families, earlier settlers, church and community leaders are buried here. In 1855, John Seller deeded the 3 acres on which the church was located to Liberty for $1, one whole dollar for 3 acres. The land was only to be used for the church, burying ground, and schoolhouse. In the 90s, the congregation outgrew the old meeting house. A barn church was constructed by builder John Redding, assisted by Amish men Josie and son Junior Miller and their crew. It was constructed in 1996 near the old Liberty Church. Right there. The other side of the historical marker has a story about Nathan Carpenter, the first colonial settler in Delaware County. So born on April 12, 1757, Massachusetts. During the Revolutionary War, he joined the Connecticut militia as a private and fought at Bunker Hill, where he was wounded. He married Irene Reed in 1781, and in 1785, they moved to New York State. In 1800, Carpenter purchased 520 acres in the Ohio Territory for $1,500. The Carpenters left New York in February of 1801 and traveled to Pittsburgh, where they floated down the Ohio River and used keelboats to go up the Scioto River. On May 1st, 1801, he arrived at his new homestead in Liberty Township, just north of this church. Carpenter built a stone spring house on his farm, and in 1804 built the first mill in Delaware County, used for sawing wood and grinding grain. He died in 1814 and is buried at Marycrest, the Carpenter family farm. So that concludes Delaware County. If you enjoy this video, make sure you subscribe, click that notification bell, like, comment in the comment section below, and share with your friends. This is Al exploring out in Delaware County. We'll see you on our next adventure.